The night was dark as I drove my truck down the empty highway. I had been on the road for hours, just me and the sound of the engine. I loved the freedom of driving, the miles stretching out ahead of me like a never-ending ribbon. But as I neared an old diner that had seen better days, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was called Joe's Truck Stop, and something about it made me uneasy. I pulled into the parking lot, hoping to grab a cup of coffee and maybe a bite to eat. The neon lights flickered as I stepped out of the truck. The air felt heavy, and the silence was unnerving. I hesitated but then pushed through the door, the bell jingling above me. Inside, the diner looked worn but familiar. There were a few truckers scattered at booths, their faces pale and tired. A waitress with dark hair stood behind the counter, her expression blank. I ordered a coffee, trying to shake off the strange feeling in my gut. As I sipped my drink, I overheard the conversations around me. The truckers spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting toward the back of the diner. I felt a prickle of anxiety. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and I noticed a man sitting alone in a booth, staring at me. His eyes were wide, filled with fear. I looked away, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. I finished my coffee quickly and stood up to leave, but as I reached for the door, it slammed shut on its own. Panic flooded my senses. I pulled on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me out," I shouted, my voice echoing in the empty diner. "Help!" I screamed, heart racing. The man in the booth stood up, his expression grave. "It's no use," he said. "We're all trapped here." I turned to see the waitress moving closer, her voice low and haunting. "You're one of us now." "No," I shouted, panic rising within me. I turned and ran for the door again, but it wouldn't open. I pounded on it, desperation flooding my senses. "Let me out. I refuse to stay here." The man moved closer, urgency in his eyes. "You have to fight it. You can't let it take you." "What do I need to do?" I asked, desperate for a way out. "You need to remember who you are," he said. "Focus on what you want." I closed my eyes, trying to calm my racing heart. I thought back to my life outside, the miles of open road and the feeling of freedom. "I'm a truck driver," I said firmly. "I have a life out there." "Good," he said. "Hold on to that." But then I heard the woman's voice again, creeping into my thoughts. "You can't leave," she said softly. "You're mine now." "No," I shouted, shaking my head. "I won't let you take me." Suddenly, I felt a surge of strength. I opened my eyes and looked around the diner. The walls seemed to ripple like water, the light flickering in and out. "I am more than this place," I shouted, my voice echoing. The woman's smile faded, her expression turning grim. "Y'all regret this," she hissed. With every ounce of willpower, I pushed against the door again. It shook, creaking under my weight. "I will leave," I yelled, pushing harder. The door flew open, and I stumbled out into the night. I gasped for air, feeling the cool breeze wash over me. I turned to look back at the diner, but it was gone. In its place stood nothing but darkness and the endless road ahead. I fell to my knees, relief flooding over me. I was free, but as I caught my breath, I felt an unsettling sensation, as if I were being watched. I climbed back into my truck, heart racing. I turned the key in the ignition, feeling the engine roar to life, and pulled out of the empty lot. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I thought I saw a figure standing in the shadows, but the road ahead was dark and quiet. I tried to calm my racing heart, but the memories of the diner lingered in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. I drove for miles, hoping to put as much distance between me and that place as possible. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw a familiar sign in the distance, "Welcome to New Mexico." Relief washed over me as I crossed the state line. I had made it. But just as I thought I was in the clear, I saw headlights approaching from behind. I looked in the mirror and saw a truck tailing me closely. My stomach dropped. What if it was one of them? What if they had come to drag me back? I pressed down on the gas, trying to outrun the truck, but it stayed right behind me, getting closer with each passing second. My heart raced as I tried to shake them off, but the truck was relentless. I turned down a side road, hoping to lose them, but the truck followed. I took a sharp turn, skidding onto a dirt road that led into the woods. The truck behind me roared to life, chasing me down the winding path. I could hear the engine revving, the sound echoing in the dark. As I drove deeper into the woods, I felt the trees closing in around me. I spotted a small clearing ahead and aimed for it, hoping to hide. I slammed on the brakes and skidded to a stop, turning off my headlights. I held my breath, waiting. The truck roared past me, its headlights illuminating the trees. I watched in fear as it disappeared into the night. I was safe, at least for now. I stayed in the clearing for a long time, my heart racing. I needed to calm down, but the fear of being followed gripped me. After what felt like hours, I finally felt brave enough to start my truck again. I drove slowly back toward the main road, my eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. As I pulled back onto the highway, I felt a sense of relief. I knew I had escaped Joe's truck stop, but the memories still haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Days passed, and I continued my deliveries, but I found it hard to concentrate. Every time I stopped for gas or food, I felt a sense of paranoia creeping in. I'd glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see that woman or the man from the diner. One night, I found myself pulling into a rest area to take a break. I stepped outside, needing fresh air, but the moment I did, I froze. There, in the shadows, stood a figure with dark hair covering its face. My heart raced, and I turned to run back to my truck, but it was too late. The figure stepped forward, revealing the woman from the diner. You thought you could escape?" she hissed, her eyes glowing in the dark. "You're ours now." I stumbled backward, feeling the cold sweat on my forehead. "No, I'm free. I left you behind," I shouted, trying to sound braver than "You can never leave," she whispered, her voice low and haunting. "You'll always come back." As I ran to my truck, I felt a strange pull, like the diner was calling to me. I fought against it, reminding myself of my life, my family, and the open road. I jumped into my truck and slammed the door shut. I started the engine, my heart pounding. I couldn't let her take me back. I drove away from the rest area, focusing on the road ahead, trying to push the fear out of my mind. I was free, and I had to stay that way. Over the next few weeks, I kept my distance from the truck stops. I took different routes, avoiding any place that felt familiar. I focused on my work, but the memories haunted me. I would wake up in a cold sweat, the woman's eyes etched in my mind. Finally, one night, I found myself at a new truck stop. It was small but welcoming, with bright lights and friendly faces. I stepped inside, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. I ordered a cup of coffee and sat down, trying to forget the terror of the past. As I sipped my drink, I noticed a group of truckers laughing and chatting nearby. They seemed happy, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of normalcy. I could finally relax. But just as I began to feel comfortable, I heard a voice behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I turned around, my heart dropping as I saw the man from the diner standing there. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You need to leave," he said urgently. "It's a trap." No, I said, shaking my head. "I'm not going back." "You don't understand," he insisted. "The diner will find you. It won't stop until it has you." I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest. "What do I need to do?" "You have to confront it. You can't run away forever. You need to face your fears." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. I knew he was right. I had to confront the darkness that haunted me. I couldn't live in fear any longer. That night, I drove back toward Joe's truck stop, my heart racing as I approached the familiar stretch of highway. I felt the darkness creeping in, but I pushed it away, focusing on my resolve. I wasn't going to let the diner control me anymore. When I arrived, the lights flickered and the sign buzzed ominously. I parked my truck and stepped out, the air heavy with tension. I walked inside, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The diner was just as I remembered, the same twisted atmosphere hanging in the air. The waitress stood behind the counter, her smile chilling. "Welcome back," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "I'm here to end this," I declared, my voice steady. "You won't take me again." The man from the booth stepped forward, his face grim. "You need to break this cycle. You have to find your strength." "I will," I said, determination flooding my veins. "I will not be afraid anymore." The lights flickered violently, and the diner began to shake. I could feel the walls closing in, the darkness creeping around me. But I stood my ground, focusing on my memories and the life I had outside. "I will break this cycle," I shouted, my voice echoing in the diner. The woman's expression changed, her smile fading into a snarl. "You will regret this." With every word, the diner shook more violently, the lights flickering wildly. I could see the fear in the man's eyes, and I knew I had to push through. "Let me go," I shouted, feeling the energy around me shift. I refused to be a part of this. With one final scream, I felt a surge of strength. The walls of the diner began to crumble, the darkness retreating. I could see the light shining through, breaking the hold it had on me. And then, with a deafening roar, the diner shattered, disappearing into the night. I found myself standing outside, the moonlight shining down on me. I was free. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. I had faced my fears and broken the cycle. I climbed back into my truck, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. As I drove down the highway, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. The road stretched out before me, endless and full of possibilities. I knew I had overcome something dark, and I was ready to move forward. The memories of Joe's truck stop still lingered in the back of my mind, but they no longer haunted me. I had taken control of my life, and I wouldn't let fear dictate my journey. As I drove into the sunrise, I felt a sense of hope and renewal. The road ahead was mine, and I was ready for whatever lay ahead. For years after that night, I continued my life as a truck driver, but I never forgot my experience at Joe's truck stop. Every now and then, I would see a flickering sign in the distance and feel a shiver run down my spine, but I wouldn't let it control me. Instead, I would drive on, knowing that the open road was my true home. I had faced my fears and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever came next. And so, I traveled the highways, 1 mile at a time, free from the shadows of my past. Jake Thompson had been a truck driver for over 10 years. He loved the freedom of the open road and the thrill of driving long distances. Every week he would load up his big rig with cargo and set off, often driving through lonely highways and desolate towns. One evening, Jake received a call from his boss. "We have a special delivery for you, Jake. It's a long haul to the old mill town of Maple Hollow. You'll need to leave tonight." "Got it," Jake replied, feeling a mix of excitement and curiosity. Maple Hollow was a small town he had heard of, but he had never been there. The place had a reputation for being quiet and isolated, but he didn't mind. It was just another job. He packed his bag, filled his cooler with food and drinks, and hopped into his truck. The sun was setting as he hit the road, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. As Jake drove deeper into the night, the roads became less familiar. He passed through small towns and empty stretches of highway. The only sounds were the hum of his engine and the occasional crackle of the radio. After a few hours, Jake noticed something strange. There were no other vehicles on the road. It was as if he was the only one out there. He shrugged it off, telling himself it was late, and most people were probably at home. But as the night wore on, he started to feel uneasy. The darkness around him felt thicker, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer. He reached for the radio, hoping to find some music to ease his nerves, but the static buzzed loudly, and he couldn't get a signal. Suddenly, his headlights caught something on the side of the road. It was an old car, abandoned and rusty, sitting off the shoulder. Jake slowed down to take a look. The windows were cracked and weeds grew around the tires. There was no sign of life. "Just an old junker," Jake muttered, shaking his head. He turned his attention back to the road and pressed on. A little while later, Jake saw a sign that read, "Maple Hollow, 20 miles. He felt a sense of relief. He was almost there. But as he continued driving, his GPS suddenly shut off and the screen went blank. "Great," he sighed. "Now what?" He decided to take a shortcut through a dirt road that ran parallel to the highway. It wasn't marked on his map, but he figured it would save him time. The dirt road was bumpy and uneven. As he drove, the trees closed in on both sides, blocking out most of the moonlight. He turned on his high beams, illuminating the path ahead. The further he went, the more he felt like he was being watched. Then, he saw something move in the trees. A figure, tall and thin, stood just beyond the edge of the road. Jake's heart raced as he squinted to see better. But just as quickly as he saw it, the figure disappeared into the darkness. Just my imagination, he told himself. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. After what felt like hours, Jake finally emerged from the trees and into a clearing. Ahead, he could see the outline of Maple Hollow. The town was small, with a few dim lights flickering in the distance. Jake drove into town, and as he did, he noticed the streets were empty. There were no people around, and the buildings looked old and worn. He parked his truck in front of a dilapidated building that appeared to be the old mill. He stepped out and stretched his legs, feeling a sense of unease wash over him. The air was thick with silence, and he could hear nothing but the rustling of leaves. "Hello?" he called out, but his voice echoed back at him. Jake walked toward the entrance of the mill, pulling out the paperwork from his boss. The place looked abandoned, but he had to make the delivery. He pushed open the heavy door, which creaked loudly as it swung open. Inside, the mill was dark and dusty. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the wooden floors creaked under his weight. Jake flicked on his flashlight, illuminating the room. He noticed a small table in the corner with a strange-looking box on it. "This must be it," he said to himself. He approached the table and carefully examined the box. It was old and weathered, with strange symbols carved into its surface. Just as he was about to open it, he heard a noise behind him. Jake spun around, his heart pounding. A man stood in the doorway, his face hidden in shadows. "What are you doing here?" the man asked, his voice low and gravelly. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "I'm here to make a delivery," he said cautiously. The man stepped into the light, revealing a face lined with age and wear. His eyes were dark, piercing. "This place isn't safe," he warned. "You shouldn't be here." Jake glanced back at the box. "I just need to drop this off and leave," he replied, trying to keep his composure. "Leave now," the man insisted. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Just then, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Jake fumbled for his flashlight, his heart racing. The man cursed under his breath, and Jake could hear footsteps moving away from him. "Wait," Jake called, but the man was gone. Suddenly, he heard a low growl coming from the shadows. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he backed away slowly, gripping the flashlight tightly. He swung the light around, searching for the source of the sound. In the corner of the room, something shifted. Jake aimed the flashlight toward the movement and gasped. There, emerging from the darkness, was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. Its eyes glowed red, and its body was twisted and deformed. Jake turned to run, but the creature lunged at him. He barely dodged it, rushing out of the mill and into the night. Breathing heavily, he scrambled back to his truck, his heart racing. He jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut and locking it. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the creature lurking in the shadows of the mill. Without wasting a second, Jake started the engine and peeled out of the parking lot. The tires screeched as he drove away from the mill, his mind racing. He needed to get out of Maple Hollow, and fast. But as he sped down the road, the creature appeared again, running alongside his truck. Jake's eyes widened in terror as it kept pace with him, its claws scraping against the metal. He pressed the gas pedal to the floor, trying to outrun it. The road twisted and turned, and he could hear the creature's snarls growing louder. Come on, Jake shouted, urging the truck to go faster. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he navigated the darkened roads. Suddenly, Jake came to a fork in the road. He had to make a quick decision. To the left, the road led to the highway. To the right, it went deeper into the woods. He took the left, praying it would lead him to safety. But just as he turned, he glanced back and saw the creature changing direction, following him. "No!" he yelled, slamming on the brakes. The truck skidded to a halt and Jake jumped out, looking for a way to escape. He spotted a nearby cabin, half hidden by the trees. Jake sprinted toward the cabin, the creature hot on his heels. He burst through the door and slammed it shut behind him. The cabin was dark and musty, with old furniture covered in dust. He quickly looked around for something to defend himself with. A heavy wooden chair caught his eye, and he grabbed it, holding it up as a makeshift weapon. The door shook as the creature slammed against it, and Jake braced himself. He could hear it growling and scratching at the wood, desperate to get inside. Jake backed away from the door, trying to catch his breath. He needed to think. The cabin had no windows, and he felt trapped. As he gathered some twigs and old newspapers, the door burst open, and the creature lunged at him. Jake swung the chair, hitting it in the face. The creature recoiled, snarling, but it was still coming for him. He quickly lit the fire, using the matches he found on the mantel. Flames flickered to life, and he pushed the chair in front of the fire as a barrier. The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes fixed on the fire. Jake felt a surge of hope. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Stay back!" To his surprise, the creature paused, staring at the flames. Jake took advantage of the moment and threw more wood into the fire, making it burn brighter. The creature let out a roar, clearly agitated. It paced back and forth, but it seemed the fire was keeping it at bay. Jake held his ground, hoping the flames would protect him. He remembered the old man's warning about the box. Whatever was in there had drawn this creature out. As the creature continued to growl, Jake glanced toward the door. If he could make it back to his truck, he might have a chance. But he couldn't leave without figuring out what was going on. He remembered the box back at the mill. If it had something to do with the creature, he needed to know what it was. With a quick plan forming in his mind, he steeled himself. The fire was still burning strong, so he grabbed a burning log and held it like a torch. "Let's do this," he said, preparing to face the creature again. Jake cautiously made his way out of the cabin, keeping the burning log in front of him. The creature was still there, lurking just outside the door. "Back off," he yelled, swinging the log toward it. The creature snarled but stepped back, clearly wary of the fire. Jake took advantage of the moment and ran toward the road, heading back to the mill. He could feel the creature following him, but he pressed on, fueled by determination. When he reached the mill, he burst through the door, searching for the box. The room was dim, but the remnants of the creature's presence lingered. Jake found the box on the table, still untouched. He took a deep breath and opened it. Inside, he found old photographs and strange trinkets, each one more unsettling than the last. As he sifted through the items, he discovered a diary hidden beneath everything. It belonged to the mill's last owner and detailed strange rituals performed in the town. The final entry mentioned a creature that was bound to the box, waiting for someone to release it. "Unbelievable," Jake murmured. He realized that the box had been the source of the creature's power, and he had unwittingly set it free. Just then, he heard the growl again, louder this time. The creature was coming for him. Jake grabbed the diary and rushed back toward the exit, determined to find a way to stop the creature once and for all. As he ran outside, he could see the creature waiting for him in the moonlight. It was more terrifying than he had imagined, and it seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Jake felt a surge of fear but pushed it aside. "I'm not done yet," he muttered, holding the diary tightly. He quickly flipped through the pages, searching for a way to contain the creature again. There, he found a passage about a binding ritual that could trap the creature within the box once more. With no time to lose, Jake began to chant the words from the diary, his voice steady and strong. The creature snarled, thrashing around as if it sensed the threat. As he recited the final words, a bright light enveloped the area. The creature howled in anger, thrashing against the force that was pushing it back. Jake felt the energy surging around him as the creature struggled against the binding spell. He raised the box high, focusing all his strength on the words he spoke. With one final cry, the light burst forth, engulfing the creature. It screamed, its form twisting and distorting as it was pulled back toward the box. Jake could hardly believe his eyes as the creature shrieked one last time before disappearing into the box. The light faded, leaving only silence in its wake. Breathing heavily, Jake dropped to his knees, exhausted but relieved. He had done it. He had contained the creature. After a few moments, he gathered himself and stood up, looking at the box with newfound respect. He needed to take it back and warn others about its power. He climbed into his truck, heart still racing. As he drove out of Maple Hollow, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. Jake knew he would never forget this night. The road ahead was still long, but he had faced his fears and survived. Just then, he noticed a fireplace in the corner. If he could start a fire, maybe he could scare the creature away. He rushed to the fireplace, frantically searching for Jake Thompson had been a truck driver for many years. He loved the open road and the feeling of freedom it gave him. Every week, he would load his big rig with cargo and hit the highway, sometimes driving through dark, lonely places. One cool autumn evening, Jake's boss called him with a special assignment. "We need you to take a load to Maple Hollow tonight. It's a long haul, but it pays well." "Maple Hollow? Never been there," Jake replied, curious. He quickly packed his bag, filled his cooler with snacks, and climbed into his truck. The sun was setting as he started the engine, the sky turning shades of orange and purple. Jake hit the highway, feeling excited about the journey. As he drove, the landscape changed from bustling towns to empty stretches of road. He enjoyed the quiet, but soon he realized he hadn't seen another vehicle for a while. It felt strange, but he shrugged it off. Just a quiet night, he thought. A couple of hours into the drive, Jake noticed a sign that read, "Maple Hollow, 20 miles. Relief washed over him. He was almost there. Just then, his GPS screen flickered and went black. "What the hell?" Jake muttered. He tried to restart it, but nothing happened. "Great, just great," he said sarcastically, gripping the wheel tighter. Determined to keep going, he continued along the road. It started to get dark, and the trees on either side of the road looked taller and more menacing. Jake switched on his high beams, hoping to see better. That's when he saw something moving in the shadows. Jake squinted, but the figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. He shook his head. Just a trick of the light, he told himself, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. A little while later, he noticed another sign that said, "Maple Hollow 10 miles. The thought of finally reaching his destination excited him, but as he continued driving, he saw a flicker of light in the distance. "What's that?" he wondered. As he got closer, he realized it was a small diner on the side of the road. It looked old and run down, but Jake figured he could stop for a cup of coffee. He parked his truck and walked inside. The bell above the door jingled, but no one greeted him. The diner was empty, with worn-out booths and faded pictures on the walls. Jake took a seat at the counter, hoping to see a waitress soon. After a few minutes, an older woman appeared from the back. She wore a faded apron and had a tired look on her face. "What can I get you?" she asked in a slow, drawling voice. "Just a coffee, please," Jake replied, trying to sound friendly. The woman poured him a cup, her hands shaking slightly. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, her gaze sharp. "No, I'm just passing through on my way to Maple Hollow," Jake said. The woman frowned. "You should be careful. That place has a history." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, intrigued. "There are stories about strange things happening there," she said quietly. "People go missing, and some say the town is cursed." Jake shrugged off her warnings. "I appreciate the heads up, but it'll be fine. I've driven all over the country." The woman looked at him intently. "Just remember, not everything is as it seems." With that, she turned and walked away. Jake sipped his coffee, feeling uneasy. The diner felt off, but he shook it off and finished his drink. After paying, he got back in his truck and continued toward Maple Hollow. As he drove, the road twisted and turned, becoming narrower and bumpier. Jake felt a growing sense of dread. The trees closed in around him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. Suddenly, his headlights illuminated an old car on the side of the road. It was abandoned and covered in rust. Jake slowed down to take a closer look, curiosity getting the better of him. He stepped out of his truck and walked toward the car. The driver's door was open, and the interior was a mess. "Looks like someone left in a hurry," he thought. Just as he turned to go back to his truck, he heard a noise behind him. He spun around, heart racing. There was nothing there. Shaking his head, Jake dismissed it as his imagination. He hurried back to his truck and got back on the road. After a while, Jake spotted a sign that read, "Welcome to Maple Hollow." He felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The town was small and quiet, with old buildings lining the main street. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the pavement. Jake drove slowly, taking in the sights. The town felt like a ghost town. There were no people around, and the buildings looked abandoned. He parked his truck in front of an old mill that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Climbing out, Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The air was heavy and still, and he could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. He grabbed the paperwork from his boss and approached the mill, feeling uneasy but determined to make the delivery. As he stepped inside, the door creaked loudly. The interior was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. He switched on his flashlight and scanned the room. In the corner, he saw a small table with an old, ornate box on it. This must be what I'm looking for, he thought. He approached the box, noticing strange symbols carved into its surface. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. Jake turned, heart racing. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he called out. No one answered. He glanced back at the box and decided to open it. Inside, he found old photographs and odd trinkets. One photograph caught his eye. It was a picture of a family standing in front of the mill. They looked happy, but something felt wrong about the image. As he examined the items, a cold wind swept through the mill, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Jake felt a chill and looked around, but he was still alone. Just then, he heard a low growl coming from the shadows. Jake turned, gripping the flashlight tightly. His heart raced as the growl grew louder, echoing in the empty room. Panic set in as he backed away from the box. "This isn't right," he muttered. He turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind him. "No, no, no," he shouted, pushing against the door, but it wouldn't budge. The growling sound grew louder, and Jake could see a pair of glowing eyes in the darkness. He took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature emerged from the shadows, a grotesque figure, twisted and snarling, with sharp teeth and long claws. Jake stumbled back, his mind racing. "What do I do?" he thought. He grabbed a nearby chair and swung it at the creature, but it was like swinging at a shadow. The chair went right through it. "Get away from me!" Jake yelled, his voice trembling. The creature lunged at him, and he ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as it passed overhead. He ran toward the back of the mill, searching for a way out. The walls seemed to close in on him, and he could hear the creature's heavy breathing behind him. Jake spotted a window and dashed toward it, but it was too small for him to escape through. Think, he urged himself, looking around frantically. His eyes landed on the box he had seen earlier. Maybe it has something to do with this, he thought. He rushed back to the box and opened it again, rifling through the contents. He found an old diary at the bottom, its pages yellowed and brittle. He flipped it open, scanning the words hurriedly. The diary belonged to the mill's last owner and was filled with strange writings and drawings. The last entry made Jake's blood run cold. It spoke of a creature that had been sealed away, bound to the box by ancient rituals. The owner had been trying to keep the creature trapped, but something had gone wrong. Why did I come here? Jake thought, realizing he had unwittingly unleashed the monster. The growling intensified, and he could feel the creature closing in on him. I have to trap it again, he shouted to himself. He flipped through the diary, desperately searching for a way to bind the creature once more. He found a passage about a ritual that could seal the creature inside the box. He took a deep breath, feeling a surge of hope. I can do this, he whispered. He began to recite the words from the diary, his voice trembling but determined. The creature snarled, thrashing around as it sensed the threat. Jake felt a rush of energy around him, and he continued to chant the words, focusing all his strength on the box. As he spoke the final words, a bright light enveloped the room. The creature howled in fury, and Jake felt the force pushing it back. He raised the box high, pouring every ounce of will into the ritual. With one last cry, the light burst forth, engulfing the creature. It screamed, its form twisting and distorting as it was pulled back toward the box. Jake could hardly believe his eyes as the creature shrieked one final time before disappearing into the box. The light faded, leaving him breathless and shaking. He dropped to his knees, exhausted but relieved. "I did it," he gasped, staring at the box in awe. He needed to take it back and warn others about its power. After a moment to gather himself, Jake stood up and pushed against the door. To his surprise, it swung open easily. He stepped outside, the cool night air hitting his face, and climbed into his truck. As he drove out of Maple Hollow, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. The town looked different in the light, almost normal, but Jake knew better. He would never forget this night. The road ahead was still long, but he had faced his fears and survived. He drove on, vowing to share his story and ensure no one else would fall into the same trap he had. As he hit the open highway, he glanced back at Maple Hollow, knowing it held secrets best left undisturbed. Lucas Weston was a long-haul trucker who had been driving across the country for almost 20 years. He loved the freedom of the open road, the silence of the night, and the comforting hum of the engine. Driving alone brought him peace. He was the kind of man who didn't scare easily, but all that changed one cold October night. It started with a call from his dispatcher, Tony. "Lucas, got a rush order for you," Tony said. "We need you to deliver a load to a small place called Cold Pines, about 300 miles north. You'll be driving through a stretch called Old Hollow Road for most of the way." "You heard of it?" Lucas thought for a moment. "Nope, but it's fine. It'll get there." "Good," Tony replied, then hesitated. "Just be careful. That road has a bit of a reputation." Lucas chuckled. "Tony, I've been through every back road and shortcut in this country. Don't worry about me." But Tony's warning lingered in his mind as he loaded up his truck and set out just before sunset. The first 100 miles were easy. The road was smooth, the sky clear, and Lucas settled into his rhythm. His favorite rock station played on the radio, and he sipped his strong coffee, the warmth spreading through him. But when he approached the exit for Old Hollow Road, his GPS suddenly lost signal. He tapped the screen, but it stayed blank. With no other choice, Lucas took the exit, telling himself he'd get through just fine without it. Old Hollow Road quickly grew eerie. The trees leaned in, their branches twisting together like bony fingers. The road narrowed, and a thick fog began to creep over the ground, making it harder to see. The clear, easy drive had turned into something else entirely, and Lucas felt the first shiver of unease settle in his stomach. Then, his radio started to crackle and hiss. Static filled the cab, and when he tried adjusting the dial, only bits of old music came through-echoes of a song that sounded like it was playing from far away. He twisted the dial again, but the radio refused to find any station. Frustrated, Lucas switched it off and focused on the road, gripping the wheel tightly. It was about an hour later when he saw her. A lone figure stood on the side of the road. She wore an old-fashioned white dress, and she was waving her hand slowly. Her face was pale and distant, her eyes dark and unfocused. Lucas' gut twisted. Picking up strangers wasn't something he ever did, and this woman seemed off. She looked out of place, like she didn't belong in this world. As he got closer, he tried to look away, but something drew his gaze back to her. The air seemed to grow colder, and his fingers numbed against the wheel. Lucas drove past her without slowing down. After a few seconds, he checked his rearview mirror, but she was gone, just vanished into the fog. "Just my mind playing tricks," Lucas muttered to himself, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. But it was hard to ignore the chill that had settled in the cab. He glanced at his empty passenger seat and felt a strange urge to check the back of the cab, even though he knew no one was there. Another mile down the road, Lucas noticed a small diner up ahead. The sign was flickering, and it looked like it had seen better days. He wasn't particularly hungry, but his nerves were rattled, and he could use a break. He pulled his truck into the lot, parking under one of the dim lights, and stepped out. The fog was so thick that it seemed to press against him, heavy and damp. Inside, the diner looked frozen in time. The booths were lined with faded red seats, and the tables had layers of dust. A waitress stood behind the counter, wiping a glass with a rag. She wore an old uniform, her expression blank and distant. "Coffee?" she asked in a monotone voice. "Yes, please," Lucas replied, taking a seat at the counter. She poured him a cup, and as he sipped, he noticed an old man sitting in a booth in the far corner. Lucas hadn't seen him when he walked in, but there he was, wearing a faded coat and a hat pulled low over his face. "Heading to Cold Pines?" the waitress asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Lucas paused, then nodded. "Yeah." "How did you know?" "Everyone who comes here is heading somewhere," she replied, her eyes fixed on him with an unsettling intensity. Lucas forced a smile, trying to shrug off the strange feeling creeping over him. After a few minutes, he glanced back at the booth in the corner, but the old man was gone. Lucas blinked, certain he'd seen him there just a moment before. When he looked at the waitress, she only stared back blankly. "Did you see where that man went?" he asked, his voice tense. The waitress tilted her head. "What man?" Lucas' pulse quickened. He gulped down the coffee, left some cash on the counter, and walked briskly out of the diner. As he got into his truck, he looked back through the diner's window and saw the old man again, staring directly at him with hollow eyes. Heart pounding, Lucas started the engine and drove off, wanting to leave the place as quickly as possible. The fog thickened, swallowing the road ahead. Lucas' headlights barely pierced it, casting strange, shifting shadows along the pavement. As he drove, the woman from earlier appeared again, standing in the middle of the road. He slammed on the brakes, his truck skidding slightly. She just stood there, motionless, staring at him with hollow eyes that seemed to hold no life. Lucas' hands shook as he gripped the wheel. He honked, hoping she'd move, but she remained still, her gaze fixed on him. Finally, Lucas decided to drive around her, his heart racing. As he passed, she turned her head slowly, her eyes following him. Lucas sped up, the unease twisting into pure fear. He kept driving, but the road seemed endless, looping back on itself. He kept seeing the same stretch of trees, the same twisted branches reaching toward him. His fuel gauge was dropping, and he hadn't seen another town, gas station, or rest stop for miles. Desperate for any sign of civilization, Lucas pulled over at a small rest area, hoping to find some directions or a phone signal. But when he checked his phone, it was dead, completely drained. Frustrated, he walked over to a sign with a map of the area, but the map was blank, just a white square with no roads or towns. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. He spun around, but no one was there. The fog seemed to shift and move, creating shadows that looked like people with blank staring faces. Lucas' heart pounded as he backed away, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He ran back to his truck, locked the doors, and tried to calm himself. But as he turned the key, a whisper filled the cab. "Lucas." He froze, his skin prickling with fear. Slowly he turned and saw the woman in the white dress sitting in the passenger seat, her hollow eyes fixed on him. "Why did you leave me on the road?" she whispered, her voice chilling. I didn't know," Lucas stammered, his throat dry. "You should never have come here," she murmured, her voice echoing. As she spoke, the fog thickened outside, pressing against the windows like ghostly hands. Lucas squeezed his eyes shut, too terrified to move. When he finally opened them, she was gone, but the fog remained, swirling and pressing around his truck. He drove for hours, but the road wouldn't end. The sky never lightened, dawn never came. It was as if he was trapped in a night that would last forever. When he finally saw a sign that read, "Welcome to Cold Pines," Lucas felt a strange relief. But the town was silent, abandoned. The houses were dark, and the streets were empty. He climbed out of his truck and wandered through the empty streets, hoping to find someone, anyone. Then he saw them. The waitress, the old man, the woman in the white dress all standing in the shadows, watching him with blank, lifeless eyes. He backed away, his mind spinning with fear. But as he tried to return to his truck, he realized the road was gone. Cold Pines had swallowed him. To this day, drivers on Old Hollow Road say they sometimes see a truck with dim lights, moving slowly through the fog. They claim to see a man in the driver's seat, staring blankly ahead, forever trapped on that haunted stretch of road. Lucas Weston never made it out of Cold Pines. His ghostly truck remains, a warning to anyone who dares take Old Hollow Road into the unknown.